God, I just love people, and I love people that are well. I don't like to see someone sick.
He was America's favorite clown, but behind that goofy smile lurked something darker. For over 40 years, Jerry Lewis secretly worked to destroy Dean Martin's career after their bitter breakup. When Dean got a movie role, Jerry called the studio to get him fired. When Dean released a song, Jerry paid radio stations not to play it. Even as Dean lay dying, Jerry refused to apologize. Today, shocking new evidence reveals just how far he went to ruin the partner who made him famous. Jerry Lewis was born on March 16, 1926 in Newark, New Jersey. His parents, Danny and Ray Levitch, were both performers. His mother sang and told jokes on stage, while his father played the piano and worked as a musical director. With two entertainers for parents, Jerry was surrounded by show business from the start. But growing up wasn't easy. The Great Depression hit many families hard, and Jerry's was no exception. Money was tight, and the world around him felt uncertain. Still, Jerry was full of energy. He had a wild streak and loved playing pranks, like sneaking into kitchens to steal food. That playful spirit was already showing signs of the comedian he'd grow into. He stepped on stage for the first time when he was only 5. His parents brought him to the Catskill Mountains, a place known for Jewish entertainers. That's where he performed Brother, Can You Spare a Dime?, a song that captured the struggles people were facing. It wasn't just a cute moment for Jerry, it was a first real taste of performing, and it left a mark. But while his parents traveled, for work Jerry often stayed behind. He spent a lot of time with his grandmother, and that made him feel alone. That loneliness would later find its way into his comedy, hidden beneath the laughs. At age 12, Jerry came up with something different. He created the record act, where he pretended to sing along with popular records. But he didn't just move his lips. He acted out every lyric in a way that was big, funny, and over the top. He spent hours in front of a mirror, perfecting every move. It became his signature routine and showed just how creative he already was. His teenage years, Jerry knew he didn't want a regular life. He wanted to entertain. So at just 15, he dropped out of high school. It was a huge gamble, but he was serious. He started performing in clubs and small theaters around New York City. The road wasn't smooth. One burlesque show went so badly that he couldn't get booked for a while afterward. To survive, Jerry took odd jobs. He worked as a soda jerk and an usher at a movie theater. It wasn't glamorous, but he didn't give up. He kept chasing his dream, no matter how long it took. Around this time, he also decided to change his stage name. At first, he called himself Joey Lewis, but it led to confusion with other performers like Joey Lewis and the boxer, Joe Lewis. To fix that, he started calling himself Jerry Lewis. It seemed like a small change, but it would end up sticking with him forever. In 1945, something happened that would change his life and comedy itself. Jerry was performing his act at the Glass Hat nightclub in New York. He was just 23. That's when he saw Dean Martin, a smooth, good-looking singer, 5 years older than him. Jerry later said Dean was the most handsome man he'd ever seen. They met that night, but nothing big came of it. Still, Jerry couldn't stop thinking about Dean. Over the next year, he kept showing up at Dean's gigs, trying to get close. Dean wasn't impressed. He thought Jerry was annoying and too eager. Then, in July 1946, everything clicked. Both men were booked to perform at the 500 Club in Atlantic City. The club owner didn't like their solo acts and gave them a choice. Come up with something together, or they'd both be out of a job. With almost no time to plan, they tried something different. Jerry started messing with Dean's singing during the show, making fun of it and causing total chaos on stage. The crowd loved it. That night, something new was born. Jerry and Dean had found their rhythm together, and the audience couldn't stop laughing. On March 3rd, Jerry Lewis signed a deal that shocked Hollywood. Paramount Pictures offered him $10 million and 60% of the profits for 14 movies over 7 years. That made him the highest paid actor in town. He also got something almost no one else had: creative control. He would own the rights to his films after 30 years, and he had the final say on how they were edited. Paramount's boss, Barney Balaban, said, "If Jerry wants to burn down the studio, I'll give him the match." It was a bold move, but Lewis was ready to prove he could stand on his own. His first solo film, The Delicate Delinquent, came out in 1957. It was supposed to be a Martin and Lewis movie, but the two had split up. Lewis had to rewrite the script and shape the film himself. He stayed up all night working on scenes, trying to get it right. Many people thought it would fail without Dean Martin to balance Jerry's wild comedy, but they were wrong. The movie made over $6 million, twice as much as their last film together. Critics were surprised. They liked Jerry's performance, especially one scene where his character, Sidney Pythias, gives a speech about feeling like he matters. Lewis had fought to keep that moment in the movie. It showed he wanted to do more than just make people laugh. By 1960, Lewis was ready to direct. He came up with an idea for a movie called The Bellboy. He wrote it, directed it, and shot the whole thing in just a few weeks. Paramount had wanted to release another film, Cinderfella, that summer, but Lewis said no. He wanted that one to come out at Christmas, so he made The Bellboy to fill the gap. He filmed it at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami, using a new trick he invented, video assist. It let him watch what he just filmed right away. Today, every director uses it. The Bellboy came out on July 20th, 1960. It made over $10 million and was a hit with critics. They called it a lesson in visual comedy. Jerry Lewis wasn't just a star anymore, he was a writer, director, and producer too. Then came The Nutty Professor in 1963. This time, Lewis played two very different characters. Julius Kelp, a shy and awkward scientist, and Buddy Love, a smooth-talking ladies' man. The idea came from a real person. Lewis once met someone nervous and strange. He spent months working on Kelp's voice and gestures. For Buddy Love, he used memories of slick nightclub guys he'd seen. People guessed the character was based on Dean Martin, but Lewis denied it, switching. Between the two roles wasn't easy. The scenes where Kelp becomes Buddy Love took a lot of effort and physical control, but the result was worth it. The film made $19 million and became a classic. Critics called it a masterpiece. Years later, it was chosen for the National Film Registry, which protects movies that are important to American culture. By the mid-1960s, Jerry Lewis was more than just famous. He was a force. His movies kept making money. Hits like The Disorderly Orderly and The Cynic. In 1966 alone, he made about $10 million, over $80 million today. That made him one of the richest entertainers in the country. Other actors saw what he had done. His deal with Paramount changed things. Stars started asking for more control and better deals. The power in Hollywood began to shift. Jerry Lewis was famous for being wild and funny, the guy who made people laugh with silly faces, loud voices, and over-the-top jokes. But in 1982, he did something totally unexpected. He took a serious role in a movie called The King of Comedy. No jokes, no clowning around, just a cold, quiet man named Jerry Langford, a talk show host who gets stalked by a desperate fan, played by Robert Darrow. People didn't know what to make of it at first. Lewis wasn't playing for laughs. He was playing it straight. And kind of sad. Langford seemed tired, lonely, and distant, a million miles from the loud, goofy characters Lewis usually played, but the critics noticed. They saw something bold in that quiet performance. It was like Lewis had taken off the mask for a moment and let the real weight of fame show through. The movie didn't make a lot of money at the time, but over the years it found its audience. Now, it's considered one of director Martin Scorsese's best films, and Lewis's role in it, people still talk about it. He didn't just show up and act, he prepared. He studied real talk show hosts, watching how they moved, how they sat, how they acted when the cameras were off. On set, he kept his distance from the cast, even Darrow, because he wanted to stay in character, and when he needed to get angry for a scene, he used some intense methods to work himself up. It wasn't easy, and not everyone on set loved it, but it worked. He delivered something raw and honest, and maybe even a little personal. Years later, at 69, Lewis surprised people again. This time, he stepped onto a Broadway stage. The show was Damn Yankees, and he played the devil himself, Mr. Applegate. Crowds loved it. He was funny, of course, but also full of charm and energy. And he sang, he danced, he owned the stage. He wasn't just reading lines. He was doing what he did best, improvising, turning tiny moments into gold. One night, someone in the audience was loudly unwrapping candy, and Lewis turned it into a comedy bit, getting laughs without even touching the script. He was getting paid $40,000 a week for the show, and he earned every cent. After Broadway, he didn't take it easy. He took the show on tour, performing in 50 cities across the country. And he kept working long after most people would have retired. And at 77, he lent his voice to The Simpsons, playing the dad of Professor Frink. A few years after that, at 80, he showed up on Law and Order. SVU, playing a serious role that reminded people he wasn't just a clown, he could act too. But before all that, before the movies, the shows, the fame, there was Martin and Lewis. They started out performing in little clubs along the East Coast. At first, nobody knew who they were, but they had something special. Dean Martin was cool, calm, the smooth singer with a laid-back charm. Jerry Lewis was chaos, jumping, shouting, making faces, playing off Dean like a human cartoon. Together, they were magic. It didn't take long for people to notice. In just a few weeks, they were packing clubs. In a few months, they were earning $5,000 a week, a huge amount at the time. They signed with a major talent agency and never looked back. Everything happened fast. Radio shows, nightclub gigs, sold-out performances. It was like they were everywhere at once. Their act was sharp, unpredictable, and filled with music, jokes, and fast-talking banter. Crowds couldn't get enough. By 1948, they were headlining at top venues like the Copacabana in New York. And when NBC gave them their own radio show in 1949, millions of people started tuning in every week. One episode had Jerry pretending to be a turkey trying to escape Thanksgiving dinner. Dean played it straight while Jerry went wild, and people loved it. By 1950, they were making $15,000 a week just from the radio. From there, it was only a matter of time before Hollywood called. Their first movie, My Friend Irma, came out in 1949. It was a hit. So were the next ones. Over 7 years, they made 16 movies together, and audiences couldn't get enough. Their films mixed comedy, music, and their one-of-a-kind chemistry. It was a formula that worked again and again. One movie, At War with the Army, made over $15 million. Another, Living It Up, earned more than $20 million. The numbers were huge, and Paramount Pictures was thriving because of them, even as things got tense between them. Behind the scenes, they kept making hit after hit. Their last film together, Hollywood or Bust in 1956, still drew big crowds. They might have been falling apart in real life, but on screen, their bond looked unbreakable. By the time it was over, their movies had brought in over $200 million. Not bad for two guys who started out in tiny clubs just trying to make people laugh. By the early 1950s, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis were on top of the world. They weren't just famous. They were everywhere. People lined up to see them at nightclubs. They ruled the radio, took over television, and packed theaters with their movies. In 1953, they landed a record-breaking deal with NBC for $35 million. It was the biggest TV deal anyone had ever seen. Just one episode of the Colgate Comedy Hour paid them $220,000. That's like $2 million today. They weren't just doing well, they were making a fortune. Between their movies, live shows, and radio gigs, they pulled in about $5 million a year. At the time, most American families made around $4,400 a year. Martin and Lewis could earn that in less than 24 hours. And they weren't just performers anymore. They started their own company, York Pictures, so they could produce their own work and keep more of the money. They also put their money into real estate and other smart investments. Everything they touched seemed to grow. But all that success came with a cost. They were constantly working, filming by day, performing by night, always on the move. It wore them down, and behind the scenes, things were getting tense. Jerry was taking more control of their projects. He cared deeply about the creative side and the business decisions, while Dean just wanted to perform and go home. Slowly, the fun started to fade. By 1956, they couldn't take it anymore. The partnership that had taken them to the top was falling apart. They made the painful decision to split up. After a decade of laughter and success, it was over. Their breakup felt like the end of an era, but their time together left a permanent mark on comedy. Then, something unexpected happened. On July 25th, 1956, exactly 10 years after their first show together, they took their final bow at the Copacabana in New York. Just 2 weeks later, Jerry got a phone call that changed everything. Judy Garland had come down with strep throat and couldn't perform her show at the Frontier Hotel in Las Vegas. Jerry was asked to fill in. He had no time to rehearse, no plan, just himself and a waiting crowd who expected Garland. He stepped onto the stage and made it up as he went. For 55 minutes, he kept the audience laughing with a completely improvised routine. At the end, he sang "Rockabye Your Baby" with a Dixie melody, a song he hadn't sung since he was a kid. The crowd went wild. They gave him a standing ovation. That night changed everything. 3 days later, he recorded the song. It took off, over 1.4 million copies sold. Then came his first solo album, Jerry Lewis Just Sings. It hit number 3 on the Billboard charts and stayed in the top 10 for 16 weeks. People in the industry who thought he couldn't make it without Dean were stunned. But by 1959, Jerry Lewis wasn't just surviving, he was a star all on his own. Decades later, he showed another side of himself. In 2013, at 87 years old, he starred in Max Rose, a quiet, serious movie about a jazz pianist dealing with the death of his wife. It was a big change from the wild comedy he was known for. Critics praised his performance. The film didn't make much money, but Jerry proved he still had the power to move people. His final role came in The Trust in 2016, where he acted alongside Nicolas Cage and Elijah Wood. He was 90 years old, but he still had that spark. Even in a small part, he could hold the screen, balancing humor and depth in a way only he could. It was a quiet, but fitting, close to a long and surprising career. His personal life was just as full of twists. Jerry married his first wife, Patty Palmer, on October 3, 1944. He was only 18 and just starting out. Over the next 2 decades, they had 6 sons: Gary, Ronald, Scott, Christopher, Anthony, and Joseph. At first, they seemed like the perfect family, but fame took a toll. Jerry's schedule kept him away from home, and he was always working. He, Macy Bice, also struggled with a prescription drug problem, which made things worse. In 1956, when his career was booming, rumors started about an affair with Marilyn Monroe. That only added to the tension at home. Still, Jerry and Patty stayed together for years. But by the late 1970s, their marriage was crumbling. In 1980, after 36 years together, Patty filed for divorce. She cited his reckless spending and cheating. The divorce dragged on for 3 years and got ugly before it was finally over in 1983. Just a month after it was finalized, Jerry married again. His second wife, Sandy Pitnick, was a former Las Vegas dancer. He was 57. She was 32 years younger. The timing surprised a lot of people, but they stayed together. In 1992, when Jerry was 66, they adopted a daughter, Danielle Sarah Lewis. No one expected it, but the adoption brought him real joy. He often said Danielle gave him new energy. Jerry Lewis never gave up. Even when his body began to fail him, he kept pushing forward, holding onto the spotlight like it was keeping him alive. In 2001, he was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis. He was 75. The disease made it hard to breathe, and that was a cruel twist for someone whose whole life had depended on fast talking and wild physical comedy. Doctors gave him prednisone to treat it. The drug helped, but it came at a price. Jerry's weight shot up 56 lbs in no time. Suddenly, even tying his shoes became hard. He didn't look like the Jerry people remembered. The skinny, bouncing comedian was gone. But he kept going anyway. He had already fought prostate cancer back in the 90s. Most people would have slowed down. Jerry didn't. He worked through it, even when the medicine pulled him into a deep depression. He later admitted he thought about ending his life. Still, he didn't stop. In 2006, at age 80, he had a heart attack in San Diego. A few months later, he was back on stage. In 2012, he collapsed from dangerously low blood sugar right before giving a speech at an event. But once he recovered, he came back to finish it. That same year, he was working on turning The Nutty Professor into a Broadway musical. He was 85. "I have to finish what I've started," he said. By his 90th birthday in 2016, Jerry's health had clearly faded. He struggled to walk and spoke openly about the pain he was living with. Still, he showed up for one last big celebration in New York, surrounded by stars and old friends. He died the next year, in August 2017. He was 91, and he passed away peacefully at home in Las Vegas with his family around him. The tributes came quickly. Jim Carrey called him a genius and said, "I am because he was." But just weeks later, everything changed. Jerry's will became public, and it shocked everyone. He had made it clear back in 2012, his 6 sons from his first marriage would get nothing, not $1, not even a mention of love or farewell. In fact, he went out of his way to make sure their children wouldn't get anything either. The story took an even darker turn when people remembered his son Joseph. Joseph had once been the one who looked most like Jerry. He was creative, sensitive, and close to his dad, until 1989, when everything fell apart. Joseph gave an interview saying life with Jerry had been miserable. He claimed Jerry beat his children and never showed real love. Jerry felt betrayed. From that moment on, he cut Joseph out completely. No more phone calls, no more visits, nothing. Joseph spiraled. Addiction, homelessness, mental illness. He lost everything. At one point, he was living in a church. He kept writing letters to his father. Jerry sent everyone back unopened. In 2009, Joseph died alone from a morphine overdose. He was 45. Jerry didn't pay for the funeral. According to Joseph's ex-wife, he didn't even offer. Joseph's brother Gary blamed Jerry for what happened. He believed the rejection pushed Joseph over the edge. Years later, when Jerry was asked about Joseph's death, his response was cold. No regret, no sadness. Meanwhile, Jerry left everything to his second wife, Sandy Pitnick, and their adopted daughter, Danielle. Danielle had been close to him and even helped manage his career in his final years. The will made it clear. Jerry had chosen a new family, and the old one was out for good. Anthony Lewis, Jerry's fifth son, said the will felt like putting the knife in and turning it. He could accept being cut out, but what hurt most was seeing his children, Jerry's grandchildren, cut out too. It didn't end there. When Jerry's funeral was held, 3 of his sons, Anthony, Gary, and Ron, weren't even invited. People asked why. No one really knew. Some pointed to his bitter divorce from his first wife, Patty Palmer. Others said the trouble got worse when Anthony sued Jerry on Patty's behalf. Maybe that was the final straw. Anthony also spoke about their childhood. He said Jerry could be terrifying. They'd hide when he came home. He remembered being hit. He remembered the fear. And then another surprise came. A woman named Susan Lewis stepped forward. She said Jerry was her father. Her mother was a model named Lynn Dixon, and she claimed she'd been born in the 1950s from an affair. Jerry never acknowledged her publicly, but Susan said he visited her when he could. She was living on the streets when he died, homeless, carrying her things in a locker, washing up in public restrooms. She didn't even know he had died until a friend told her. That's how far away she was from the life of the man she believed was her father. A DNA test later showed an 88.7% chance that she and Jerry's son Gary shared the same father. Still, Jerry never said a word one way or the other. For all the pain Jerry caused in his personal life, there was another side to him, a side that gave millions of people hope. It started in 1966 when he hosted the first Muscular Dystrophy Association telethon. That night, they raised over $1 million. Jerry was stunned. He had to climb a ladder to change the number on the board. Every year after that, the telethon grew. By the early 70s, it was raising tens of millions. Jerry's co-host Ed McMahon once predicted they'd break 10 million, and they did. Jerry celebrated by painting a 1 onto the board with a brush and wiping it on his tuxedo. The show became a cultural event. Everyone showed up. Cher, John Lennon, Johnny Cash, the Rolling Stones. In 1976, Frank Sinatra brought Dean Martin on stage, reuniting the old comedy duo live on air after 20 years of silence. That moment made TV history. Through the telethon, Jerry helped raise over $245 billion. He didn't just collect money. He raised awareness. He made people care. He kept going year after year, often hosting for over 21 hours straight. Even in his final years, the show brought in nearly $60 million annually. It became a lifeline for the MDA. In 1986, a breakthrough came. The gene responsible for Duchenne muscular dystrophy was discovered. Jerry had helped make that happen. Then in 1977, something unexpected. Jerry was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. No entertainer had ever been nominated before. He didn't win, but the nomination said everything about the impact he'd had. He made people laugh, he made people cry, and he made people care. But in the end, his story was more complicated than anyone expected. Jerry Lewis left behind a legacy of brilliance and pain, of stages filled with laughter and family dinners filled with silence. He was a man who gave so much to the world, but couldn't, or wouldn't, give the same love to his own children. And that's what makes his story so hard to forget.